So kia ora, and thank you for having me. I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank the Neurological Foundation for inviting me to speak tonight and for the support the Foundation has given me through the O'Brien Clinical Fellowship. I'd also like to thank the O'Brien family themselves, as without their kindness and generosity with funding, this project wouldn't have been possible. So I've been working as a physiotherapist for a number of years now, initially as a new grad at North Shore Hospital and then over in the UK for a few years. And I've been since working at Auckland Hospital, which is now Te Tokotumai, since 2015. I worked on the ward during Prep 2 development and implementation. I'm currently completing this research project, like Juliet said, working with Professor Kathy Stanier at the University of Auckland in Te Tokotumai. What I'm going to be talking about tonight is predicting upper limb outcomes for patients following stroke. Sadly, stroke is the second biggest killer and leading cause of adult disability in Aotearoa and worldwide. In New Zealand, there are around 9,000 strokes per year. That's approximately one every 55 minutes. At any point, there is around 56,000 stroke survivors, and we expect a 40% increase by 2028. Stroke can affect people at any age, and 25 to 30% of strokes are experienced by people under the age of 65 years. So what is stroke? Stroke is a sudden onset of neurological deficit that lasts for at least 24 hours. It results from an interruption of blood flow to the brain, usually caused by a blood clot or ruptured blood vessel. 80% of strokes are from a blood clot and about 20% from a bleed. Now, if there's one thing I want you to remember from today's presentation, it's not about predicting the future, it's this: time is brain. Stroke is a medical emergency, and if you think you or someone else is having a stroke, call 111 immediately. If you notice there's facial drooping, weakness in the arm, difficulty with speech, then take action and call 111. Every minute with no blood flow to the brain, the brain loses 2 million brain cells, 14 billion brain connections, and 12 kilometers of brain cell fibers every minute. Dead brain is dead. It isn't coming back, and there's nothing we can do about it. To save the brain, we need to act quickly, and acting fast can save lives and give people the best chance at recovery. So what causes stroke? Some of the most common causes of stroke are high blood pressure, smoking, high cholesterol, and uncontrolled diabetes. Some of the less common are irregular heart rhythm, major surgery, and trauma. The best way to treat a stroke is to prevent it in the first place. 75% of strokes are preventable if risk reduction strategies are taken on board. These include lowering your blood pressure, quitting smoking, lowering your cholesterol, controlling your diabetes, and getting regular health checkups. The Stroke Foundation are providing free blood pressure checks in their mobile vans. Treatment. So for an ischemic stroke, we need to use clot-busting medication or thrombolysis to break down the clot, but it must be administered within 4.5 hours of stroke. Hence why it's so important to get to hospital quickly. And also some people are eligible for clot retrieval. Hemorrhagic stroke, main treatment is to lower the blood pressure and possibly surgery. So what about stroke recovery? Well, stroke is caused by problems with the blood. Acute treatment is about the blood, and prevention is about the blood, but recovery is about the brain. Stroke can have permanent effects on brain function as well as physical abilities. Exactly which functions are impaired depends on the severity of the stroke and where in the brain it occurs. We're focusing on motor function because it is commonly impaired by stroke. Around 3/4 of people experience motor symptoms. Recovering motor function is critical for regaining independence in the daily activities. And a large study found that there were 3 main factors that affected how independent someone was at 6 months after the stroke. They were upper limb motor function, age, and stroke severity. Prediction is difficult. Recovery can often be difficult, leaving patients in their whānau with questions about the future. Clinicians actually aren't particularly good at predicting motor outcomes based on clinical assessments alone. And one of the reasons for this is that patients with similar acute presentations can have very different recoveries and outcomes. Here is some data from the PREP2 research. Time since stroke in weeks is on the x-axis, and the y-axis shows the ARAT score with a maximum of 57. The ARAT is the Action Research Arm test. You can see that patients were assessed within 2 weeks of stroke, and again at 6, 12, and 26 weeks after stroke. Overall, this group of patients tends to improve, which is what we expect, but there's a great deal of variability within the group. If you look at these two patients who initially have moderate impairment, you can see that one steadily improves and achieves almost full score by 6 months, but the other doesn't really improve much at all. And these two patients have a more severe initial impairment, and one does spectacularly well, while the other makes more modest gains. And these two patients start with very little voluntary movement 2 weeks after stroke, yet one makes a good recovery and the other doesn't improve. This is challenging for therapists because if you're caring for these two patients, it can be hard to understand why one seems to be responding well to your treatment while the other doesn't. Does the person who isn't improving need more therapy or a different combination of treatments? It's hard to know, and this can lead to uncertainty and put a dent into a therapist's confidence. What we need is a better way of making accurate predictions of motor outcome for individual patients. Being able to accurately predict a patient's recovery would help tailor rehabilitation goals, manage patient expectations, and use their time and resources to bring the best outcomes for the patient. So what is PREP2? PREP stands for Predicting Recovery Potential. The algorithm is a stepwise decision tree which only involves a basic bedside assessment for the majority of patients. The algorithm includes a SAFE score, the patient's age, TMS assessment, and the NIHSS score. All assessments are conducted in the first week post-stroke and are used to predict the upper limb functional outcome the patient is likely to achieve within 12 weeks post-stroke. The outcome categories have been called excellent, good, limited, and poor. The key thing to note is that patients in all prediction categories still need rehabilitation, only the content and the goals of that rehabilitation will change. I'll discuss these predictions and their implications for the rehabilitation shortly. Briefly, it looks like this. It begins with a SAFE score, and SAFE stands for shoulder abduction and finger extension. The power of each muscle group is tested with a Medical Research Council grading system and given a score out of 5. The scores are added to give an overall SAFE score out of 10. If the patient's SAFE score on day 3 is 5 or more, the patient will follow the algorithm upwards. From here, their age is considered, as in if they were under or over 80 years old, and the patient will be given either an excellent or a good prediction. If they are young, which means they are less than 80 years old, they are most likely to have an excellent outcome for their hand and arm within 90 days. If the patient has a SAFE score of at least 5 but is 80 or more, then they'll need a SAFE score of at least 8 to likely have an excellent outcome. Otherwise, they will more likely to have a good outcome for their hand and arm. Around 2/3 of patients come through this top half of the prediction tool, which means with a simple bedside assessment, you can give most patients a fairly accurate idea of what to expect. For patients who have a SAFE score of less than 5 on day 3, the function of their descending motor pathways to the affected arm will need to be tested. This is done by using transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, between 4 and 7 days post-stroke. TMS is a safe and painless and non-invasive way of testing whether the motor pathways from the brain to the spinal cord are working. In PREP2, the TMS generates a brief magnetic stimulus which stimulates the motor cortex on the stroke-affected side of the brain and to see whether a message can get through to the muscles of the paretic hand or arm. The patient is categorized as MET positive if motor evoked potentials are observed, indicating that the motor cortex and the descending motor pathways are still functionally intact, even though the patient might have great difficulty activating the muscles themselves. So if they are MET positive, these patients are predicted to have a good outcome. If a response is unable to be elicited, patients are MET negative and their prediction depends on their overall stroke severity. In IHSS is a scale of stroke severity where a lower score is a less severe stroke and a higher score is a more severe stroke. If their NHSS score on day 3 is less than 7, then they are predicted to have a limited outcome. And if it's 7 or more, they are more likely to have a poor outcome. So what do each of these outcome categories mean? An excellent prediction means the patient is expected to be able to use their hand and arm fairly normally in usual activities. A good prediction means they are expected to be able to use their hand and arm in usual activities, but it is still likely to be weaker, slower, and more clumsy than before the stroke. A limited prediction means the patient may get limited movement back in the hand and arm, and they may have some gross grasp function, but are unlikely to recover the fine motor control. A poor prediction means the patient will not have functional use of their hand and arm. Any return of movement is likely to be limited to proximal arm movement. It's important to note that we're only talking about their hand and arm recovery here, nothing to do with any other aspects such as walking, speech, cognition, or overall stroke recovery. And I'd just like to reiterate and reinforce that everybody needs therapy and everybody gets therapy, but the focus needs to change depending on the brain's capacity for recovery. Overall, the PrEP2 tool accurately predicts upper limb outcomes for 75% of patients. There's room for improvement and we're doing further work on this, but it's still more accurate than clinical judgment. And when the prediction is wrong, it's not wrong by much. Importantly, it's the most accurate for the limited and the poor predictions where we need the highest accuracy. The PrEP algorithm gave therapists more confidence, more focused upper limb rehabilitation tailored to the recovery potential of the individual participants, and may have contributed to a shorter length of stay by around 1 week. PrEP information may increase rehabilitation efficiency with no negative effects on patient outcomes. And 80% remain accurate at 2 years. I know that's a lot of information to take in, so before we go any further, I'd like to quickly draw your attention to the Presto website. This contains a huge amount of information on the PrEP2 algorithm that I've just talked about and the research behind it. So as you can see, the algorithm is optimistic overall. It's very accurate for the limited and the poor predictions. If you don't have METs, then unfortunately, it's not physically possible to regain fine motor control of the hand. MET negative patients get a lot of therapy. It's just the goals need to be tailored according to what's biologically possible for the brain to achieve. Lots of therapy for secondary complications and adaptation to minimize disability and optimize activity and participation. The good category is the messy middle. It's reasonably accurate for people with a safe score of 5 or more, so those who follow the decision tree upwards, but less so for MET positive patients tested with a TMS, because being MET positive doesn't guarantee a good outcome. Lots of other factors that we're looking at the moment with PrEP2 VIP analysis. So this is where PrEP2 VIP comes in. VIP stands for validation in practice. We wanted to know what happens when the clinicians are the ones using the algorithm and delivering these predictions. Does it remain as accurate? Secondly, we wanted to understand how the patients, their whānau, and the clinicians feel, receiving and delivering these predictions. Do they want to know what's it like for them and how can we do things better for the future? So what we did, we completed an observational research project that followed patients up for 6 months following stroke. All strokes who were admitted to Auckland Hospital, who were over the age of 18 years old, had a diagnosis of stroke, ischemic or hemorrhagic, but excluding cerebellar stroke, and who were given a PrEP2 prediction were eligible to be included. I'd just like to point out that everybody chose to have PrEP2 information. Clinically, people are offered this prediction information, and they're able to decline it or delay it until they feel ready for it. We completed baseline data and assessments within 7 days of stroke onset, 1 month and 3 months and 6 months post-stroke. Assessments included motor function, bimanual coordination, sensation, cognition, neglect, apraxia, pain, swelling, fatigue, quality of life, and self-efficacy. Who took part? So we recruited 100 people with a median age of 75 years. Just under half were women. About 10% each were Māori, Pacific, and Asian. 85% of them, it was their first stroke. Half had a moderate stroke, third mild, and the rest were severe. So it was representative of the general stroke population. Of the 100 participants, 47 were given an excellent prediction, 40 were given a good, 2 a limited, and 11 a poor. A subset of participants were also included in the qualitative component, completing short, semi-structured interviews with them and their whānau after the prediction delivery, and again at 3 and 6 months after the stroke, to understand their experience and what it was like for them. Of the 12 participants in the qualitative component, again, median age 58 years old, about half woman, 92% their first stroke. 8 of their whānau were included, which included a husband, wife, partner, daughter, son, and sister, and 9 clinicians. Of the 12 in the qualitative part, 2 received an excellent prediction, 5 a good, 1 limited, and 4 poor. The clinicians, I interviewed 3 occupational therapists and 6 physiotherapists, all working in Aotearoa, which is Ward 51 in the stroke unit at Te Taugatumai, Auckland Hospital. And they had a range of clinical experience, as well as varying degrees of experience with delivering Prep 2 predictions. What did they tell us? So I completed 70 interviews over the 3 time points and used content analysis to generate themes reflecting their experience. Key themes that were identified: people usually want to know, even when they know it might be a negative outlook. They don't always remember the prediction information they're told, and if they do, they generally don't remember in any kind of detail. And what makes for a good experience? Overwhelmingly, people were extremely positive about their experience and had little, if any, suggestions for improvement. How they felt. For many people, stroke is a life-changing event. Their world as they know it may have been turned upside down. They are experiencing a range of emotions and feelings such as fear, worry, frustration, and the unknown. Overwhelmingly, they all express their desire to go home, to get back to normal and living their life. One participant described their experience as being stressful with the unknown, but the care that was put in place was amazing. People generally want to know regardless. They want honest information and they want to know the truth. Why do they want to know? This information may help alleviate some of the unknown they are feeling and could potentially help make sense and adjust to this life-changing event they are experiencing. A family member described the information as helping with the healing, and a participant stated it was better to have an answer than sit around wondering and waiting. They were clear that this information may not be wanted or appropriate for everyone, despite it being something they chose to have, and was up to each individual to decide if this was something they wanted to know or not. This highlights the need for this information to be individualized and tailored to their own situation. And one of the whānau said, "Yeah, it's the not knowing which is the hard part." And a person with stroke said, "Well, it will just make things clearer about what might be in the future." So what makes for a good experience? Despite wanting to know this information, people don't always remember. There's a lot going on in the early days after having a stroke. Those who do remember generally don't remember the specifics or the details of the information that was provided. A thought to explore further with ongoing analysis is this a problem? Do we need to remind the patients and revisit the conversation again over time? Or did it serve its purpose in those early days? What value will be added by reminding them? As I said before, overwhelmingly, people were extremely positive with their experience, and this didn't differ depending on what information people were given. They described the clinicians as displaying professionalism. They felt things were explained really well. They were well prepared. They knew what to expect. They felt the clinicians were caring towards them and their whānau. They couldn't fault the communication, both verbal and non-verbal. They had no concerns with the timing or the location of the test, or whether information was provided. They described things such as respect and empathy they felt from the clinicians throughout, which all contributed to a positive experience for them. They also give me the reassurance that, don't worry, we're working on it. We'll know if something changes in the future. Everyone talks incredibly positively here and seems to carry on fighting no matter what, which is very admirable. I think this information reflects our training and the serious work being done during the implementation, as well as the deep desire on the part of the clinicians to do this well. This is particularly worth noting, given that clinicians are not typically trained in this as part of their routine training, and becoming good at this requires additional training and support. So what were the results? Overall, Prep 2 is 66% accurate when done by clinicians. 29% didn't quite make it, meaning it was too optimistic, and only 5% did better than predicted. The 5% were all patients who were predicted to be good, but achieved an excellent outcome. As you can see, it is 81% accurate for the excellent category, 37% accurate for the good category, 50% accurate for the limited category. However, there was only 2 participants in the limited category. One achieved limited and the other didn't quite make it. And it's 100% accurate for the poor category. So again, it remains optimistic overall, and it's only wrong by 1 category. This time it's most accurate for the excellent and the poor group. No one who was given a negative prediction achieved a good or excellent outcome. And the patients who are given a good with TMS remain the messy middle. Like I said, most often overestimating what they will achieve. So what does it mean? What happens when clinical teams use Prep 2, and what do the patients in their whānau think? Well, we can be reassured that clinical teams can and do use the tool accurately, but as you'd expect, not quite as accurate as the initial research. We as researchers are continuing the work to improve accuracy of the good predictions. In the meantime, the clinicians can feel confident with good training, the prediction tool will perform well in their hands. This is likely to Prep 2 being developed at this site, as it makes it a little easier for clinicians to pick up and implement, but also many months of time and resources into training and supporting clinicians to deliver predictions. Also, it gives us some confidence that Prep 2 is a robust prediction tool that can be successfully used by clinical teams without researcher involvement. The messy middle. We now want to know if there's any other factors that influence whether someone with a functioning corticospinal tract is able to effectively use this connection to use their hand and arm well again. We will be looking closely at these factors in a more detailed analysis shortly. And from the interviews, we've learned that patients and their families do typically want this information, and that clinicians who are trained in providing it are doing a very good job of providing it in a way that is safe. So I want to draw your attention to 2 of the 12 qualitative participants in Prep 2 VIP. I've changed their names for confidentiality purposes. So Tama is a male in his late 50s. He's got a SAFE of 0+0 on day 3, so he's got no movement in his arm and hand. He's had a moderate stroke, so he's had an NHSS of 13. He's had a right partial anterior circulation infarct with no thrombolysis or clot retrieval. Sam is a male in his early 50s. He's also got a SAFE of 0+0 on day 3 with a moderate stroke, NHSS of 13. And he has also had a right partial anterior circulation infarct with no thrombolysis or clot retrieval. Both of these gentlemen were independent and working prior to their stroke. From a clinical perspective, they appear very similar in terms of stroke severity and upper limb impairment. As a clinician, very early on, it would be difficult to tell how much recovery each person could expect to make. So what was the outcome for these 2 lovely gentlemen? Tama had TMS on day 5 and was found to be MET negative, meaning his descending motor pathways had been irreversibly damaged, and he was given a poor prediction for his hand and arm recovery. Sam had TMS on day 7 and was found to be MET positive, so he was given a good prediction. Both of these gentlemen still got rehabilitation. However, the content and focus for their rehab was very different. At their 3-month assessments, both men achieved the outcome they were predicted to achieve. I'd like to point out that despite their very different trajectory and outcomes, both of them are still able to live happy, meaningful, and fulfilling lives. They have both just had to adapt and learn how to do things differently according to their brain's capacity for recovery following the stroke. What did Tama and Sam have to say about their experience, remembering that Tama was given a poor prediction and Sam was given a good prediction? Well, Tama said, well, again, it's just one of those things I have to live with, and it will do what it will do, and it is what it is. Tama also said, good or bad, it doesn't matter. I'd rather be told the truth. Sam said, yeah, it was good someone telling me that. Very helpful. So as you can see, they both still felt that it was information that they wanted to have, even after that information had been given to them. What about their whānau? Tama's partner said, they asked us there and then, did we want to know? We said yes, because we have to deal with this, right? So it's no good having delayed stuff, I don't think. I liked that they could tell us straight away, here you go. I really appreciated that because all the delayed stuff doesn't help. Sam's wife, it gives us hope. Yeah, it's better to know earlier what's happening, looking ahead. Again, they both found value in having that information available to them and their loved ones, despite receiving very different information. So just referring back now to what we set out to achieve with this Prep2 VIP project in relation to Tama and Sam. Prior to this project, we knew a lot about the prediction tool, but we didn't have any understanding about what the patients or their whānau thought about receiving this information. So as you can see, Prep2 is able to give patients and their whānau valuable and accurate information about their predicted hand and arm recovery within the first week of having a stroke. Provides them with realistic information about what they can expect over the next 3 months following the stroke. We now know this is information is something that they want, even when it might not be the news they were hoping for. It is well received and communicated in a way that is individualised and safe for them and their whānau. Findings from these interviews have allowed us to have some insight and provide meaning for what it is like for people receiving Prep2 information, as well as to understand their experience. It gave them an opportunity to provide feedback and help improve the process for people with stroke in the future. So what now? We're continuing to complete the qualitative analysis from the interviews and are going to look next at the clinician data and what their experiences were. As I said before, the next step is to have a really good look at the good prediction group to see what other factors may be contributing to this group not reaching their predicted outcome. I'll feed back the findings and any clinical improvement recommendations to the Prep2 clinicians and staff on Aotearoa once all the data is complete. Prep2 is currently being tested across 30 sites in the US in the Verify study. Other sites in New Zealand are in varying stages of the implementation process to use Prep2 in their routine clinical practice. So in conclusion, Prep2 continues to help clinicians tailor rehabilitation to an individual's capacity for recovery. Patients and their whānau want to know what they can likely expect, and there's ongoing work to be done for the TMS good category to improve its accuracy. I'd just like to leave you with something that one of our lovely participants said. I know one thing for sure, that the brain is a superpower. It controls everything of the body. So I'd just like to again thank the Neurological Foundation for the funding to complete this research, the participants and their whānau, and the clinicians who are involved and so generous with their time and sharing their experience. Professor Kathy Stanier, Dr. Harry Jordan from the University of Auckland, and Dr. Felicity Bright from AUT, and my NRG colleagues for their guidance and input. Thank you for your time.
Amazing, Olivia. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I found that so interesting, and it's so awesome to see research being done into the patient experience. I just think that that's such a valuable insight, and I'm sure you agree as a clinician. So thank you, and thanks for all your work. So for everybody watching, the session's now open for a Q&A. As I said at the start, you can use the little chat box. It looks like we've got a couple of questions that have come through, Olivia, so I will just open this up. The first one is, this is wonderful work. Thank you so much. So thank you for all you're doing. And could you tell us what has been the highlight of this research for you personally? I'm sure there's probably many.
Yes, no, good question. I think that having been involved with Prep 2 right from the beginning, so when the original Prep research was being done and the implementation at Te Tauka Mai, I always knew and saw the value of it from my perspective as the physiotherapist and the clinician, but I think that what I've really enjoyed with Prep 2 VIP is talking to the participants and their whānau and about whether it was something they wanted and how they felt about it, and all the really positive and honest conversations I had with them over the time, particularly knowing that it was a really difficult time for some of them and so early on after the stroke. So I think I've really enjoyed having that connection with them and understanding and getting their feedback and inputs so that we can continue to do the best we can for our patients, right? Because that's why we're doing this, and that's why we want to find out what they thought and how it was for them, so that we can continue doing a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree, and I'm sure that it gives you, as somebody who's entered into the healthcare space, it's it's a certain kind of person usually who wants to care for others, and so that's all a part of building that. So yeah, that's really special. All right, so you did mention that I think that the Prep 2 is being trialed in other sites across New Zealand. Do you know, I might have gotten that wrong, hopefully got that right. Do you know where else in New Zealand it's being trialed, and what the timeframes might be?
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure where individual sites are at. So I know North Shore Hospital were implementing it and using TMS for the Prep 2 algorithm, but I'm not sure where other sites were at. I know Middlemore and Waikato are also in different stages or interested in implementing it, but no, I'm not sure where each individual sites are at.
No, sure. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more about the Verify study in the States. Do you know, I wasn't familiar with it, and I'm not sure, maybe some of our viewers aren't. Could you just tell us a bit more about what that is?
So that's with Kathy Stanier, Professor Kathy Stanier and Dr. Harry Jordan are involved with getting that up and running over in the US, and they're looking at implementing it in their research and in their healthcare setting, because it's quite different to how it is here in New Zealand. So
amazing.
They're in the very early stages, but they have started patient recruitment.
Wow, okay. Well, I'll keep an eye out for more info on that one. Okay, can you clarify the people who are given poor outcomes as part of the initial kind of assessment? I suppose this probably varies patient to patient, but do their rehabilitation timeframes that you set vary? I know you said everybody gets rehabilitation. Is it always for the same amount of time, the 3 months, or does the Prep 2 inform shorter or longer, or does it change?
Yeah, so the Prep 2 predictions don't inform how much rehabilitation somebody gets at all, whether it's inpatient or once they're home in the community. Typically, we see that the poor predictions actually have longer length of stays in hospital, because they have a bit more of a challenge to overcome before getting home or leaving the hospital. But certainly rehab is not rationed for the poor and the limited patients. It's just a different focus, and it's certainly not information that's used to in discharge planning or how much rehabilitation someone gets. That's all based on patients' goals and where they're at and what they need to achieve to either get home or be discharged from community therapy.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, being a physio in the neuro research world is so interesting. And what got you interested in this type of work?
Good question. I don't know. I think when I started as a new grad at North Shore Hospital, like many physios who start in the hospital, I started on the rotation. So I did a little bit in each and every area of the hospital for months at a time, and worked on the stroke unit there as one of the last rotations. And then when I was overseas, it just seemed to be mainly where I was working, and with my time back at Auckland Hospital, I knew that that's where I wanted to get back to doing, and just find the work really rewarding and enjoy the time that you can spend with people and the progress that you can make, and the therapeutic relationships that you can have with the patient and their family. I just find it is most rewarding for me. And
yeah, I can imagine that. That's so special. I really, really enjoyed hearing all of the feedback from the patients and the whānau, and just imagining how many people in a hospital setting you would see every day. And obviously in rehab, you have people coming back to you and you get to be with them while they achieve and reach goals. And I can just imagine how inspiring that is for you and your team. We've got a question here, which hopefully I've got the right idea. Do you have any initial thoughts on the lower good in capital letters results?
I think what they're meaning is, do I have any initial thoughts on what might be causing the people not to reach the good predictions that they're predicted? I do have certain things that I'm going to look at first, but I don't want to speculate on what they are, and I could be very wrong. And that's why when we did the assessments over time, we included such a wide range of things that we wanted to assess to see if any of those things were contributing to why these patients weren't achieving the prediction that they were predicted to achieve. So whether it is that they've got a big neglect, so or whether it's to do with fatigue or lots of pain, but without having done the statistical analysis, I don't want to speculate too early, but I'm hoping in the next few weeks we will be able to find out if or what or if any factors are the main ones that are contributing to this group of people that aren't quite reaching where we'd hope that they be able to achieve.
Yes, and of course, please don't put the cart before the horse, or but we look forward to being able to share an update on that once you have maybe drawn some predictions from there. So everyone who's watching, please keep an eye on our socials and everything for any updates on Olivia's work. Okay, that's the end of our submitted questions so far, but if anybody does have any more, please feel free to send them through. We've got a few more minutes. What I wanted to do in this time is just remind everyone of the website that Olivia shared. If you wanted any more information on the Prep2 tool, it's presto.auckland.ac.nz, Presto spelled Presto. And that I will share that when I send out a little link for everybody who attended to complete a survey telling us what you thought. So I'll make sure that that link is in there. And also what Olivia shared, which I'm hoping most people are familiar with, is the FAST acronym for everyone to remember. If you suspect anybody is having a stroke or suffering from a stroke, it's face, speech. That's right, isn't it? Off the top of my head. Yeah. And then take action, everyone. And as always, you know, if you have any concerns about your health, always see your GP or speak to your clinicians. We do have couple more questions coming through, which is great. Thank you for your work, and what do you like about working in this sector in Aotearoa?
I think just like I said before about why I got into neurophysio, I think it's just for myself personally, I just think it's an incredibly rewarding area to work in, and in the research specifically, it was an opportunity that came up with applying for funding through the Neurological Foundation. I'd been obviously involved in research over the years of Prep 2 being implemented, but it's been an extremely, again, rewarding, and I've learned so much being involved in the research side of things as well, that will hopefully improve skills and be able to continue to keep improving the health outcomes for these stroke patients in New Zealand, and specifically in Auckland as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and I think this may have been in your presentation, but when the patients who have suffered a stroke who do receive clot retrieval surgery,
mm-hmm.
and the retrieval is successful, which I suppose is a measured result depending patient to patient, but they still fall under your study for Prep 2, do they, if they've received that surgery?
They do, if they've still got residual impairment. So if they've still got some arm or hand weakness on the affected side, then yes, they are absolutely eligible for Prep. And if they are fully recovered, which some are, and it's fantastic, clot retrieval's had some fantastic outcomes, then no, they don't get a Prep 2 prediction. But anyone who has any residual hand or arm weakness is eligible for a Prep 2 prediction.
Awesome. I'm not sure that you'll be able to comment on this question, but looking at how equitable this could be, judging by how expensive the TMS machine can be, obviously you're not in charge of purchasing it, do I? But do you think that that's something that impacts the way that these things go? Is this something that could be looked at through research?
I don't know about, I don't think it's something that can be addressed through research, but I think that now being one Te Whatu Ora, I think potentially it's something that could be looked at, because it should be accessible to everyone who lives in New Zealand, and in terms of funding, that's not my area of expertise, so I don't know, but I would like it to be available to everyone who has a stroke who is in New Zealand, no matter where they live. So yeah, definitely that would be nice, but certainly not something in the scope of research, I don't believe.
No, yes, I agree, and absolutely we would love for everyone to have access, and that's the idea behind it. All right, so that will be the end of our session today. We've come to the end of our questions, so I just wanted to say a big thank you again, Olivia, for taking the time to present your work to us and all that you're doing for the patients and their whānau, which everybody knows it takes a village, and that's a really big part of what you're doing, and it's really special. And at the foundation, we're just so proud to be a part of it. So thanks again, and thanks to everybody who has been watching and joined us tonight. Please do keep an eye out on your inboxes for the survey link, where I'll also link to the resources that Olivia shared with us tonight as well. So thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you very much.
Ka kite.